Governor Perdue releases her state budget proposal. Senate Republicans begin work on reforming medical malpractice laws and a new effort to adjust the public school year calendar. Next.
Quality public television is made possible through the financial contributions of viewers like you, who invite you to join them in supporting UNC-TV.
Hello, I'm Kelly McCullen. Governor Bev Perdue released her 2011 budget plan this week. She's proposing a mixture of spending cuts, state job eliminations, and the renewal of a temporary sales tax to close an expected multi-billion-dollar budget gap. Governor Bev Perdue followed her Monday State of the State address by releasing her 2011-2012 budget proposal. She says improvements in Medicaid expenses, the state retirement and health plans, as well as higher tax revenue collections, sliced a projected $3.7 billion deficit by about one-third.
And the budget that I proposed today, in comparison to that budget that I inherited, is $2.2 billion less. Spends 11% less per capita, and it does all this in the realities of 400,000 plus new people moving into our state. So services and state utilization has increased while we have trimmed the budget.
The governor says her budget would close the expected budget deficit using 70% cuts while preserving a 3/4 penny temporary sales tax. House Speaker Tom Tillis says voters spoke loudly last November against new or extended taxes.
The thing that we're probably most concerned with in this budget is that it still has $1 billion of revenue. I should say about $800 million in terms of the sales tax, the assumption that 3/4 of the sales tax will not be sunset. We think that the governor and the Republican members who ran on the promise to sunset those taxes should sunset those taxes.
The governor's budget proposal calls for lower state corporate income tax rates from 6.9% to 4.9%. It would give small businesses a $65 million unemployment insurance tax credit and give community colleges $25 million to buy equipment for job training courses. The governor's public education budget would save every teaching and teaching assistant job in North Carolina, but local school administration budgets would be slashed. 15% reductions in non-teaching jobs like clerical positions and custodians. Local school districts would face buying their own school buses, and the State Department of Public Instruction is directed to cut up to 40 positions. House Speaker Tom Tillis sees common ground with the governor's ideas.
We like the idea that the governor shares our view that we need to the maximum extent possible minimize the impact on classroom teachers and teachers' assistants.
The governor's budget would tell the UNC system to cut 9.5% of its general administration budget. Those reductions would target senior and middle management positions, low-performing and redundant programs, among other measures. The move would eliminate 1,900 positions. Universities could boost tuition fees to save 450 jobs. UNC Hospital would see a 25% cut in subsidies to offset charity care. University building maintenance and operation costs system-wide are preserved. Enrollment growth is funded, and East Carolina's dental school would receive a $3.5 million boost as it enrolls its first class this fall. The community college system would lose 8 special programs or centers located at various campuses. Students would pay $5.50 more per credit hour. Community colleges would begin paying their own workers' compensation costs. Community college campuses would receive extra enrollment growth funding, enough to cover 2.9% in enrollment increases. General state government operations will see consolidations. Governor Perdue proposes eliminating 68 non-essential programs, reducing 71 other programs, and reorganizing another 37 agencies. This could eliminate 4,700 positions. 14 executive branch agencies would be merged into 8. The governor's budget proposes thousands of position eliminations. The total government-wide could be up to 10,000 positions. But the governor's budget team believes only about 3,000 of those 10,000 jobs are actually filled. The rest are vacant as a result of attrition and a hiring freeze. Governor Perdue's budget proposal offers buyouts to state workers at or near retirement age. Employees who can retire would be offered a one-time $10,000 payment to retire with unreduced benefits. State workers who could retire with reduced benefits would be offered a one-time $20,000 early retirement package. Republican leaders say the governor's overall budget plan does cut spending in what they call the right places. But the governor's drawing a line on that sales tax extension. She says it's a priority and it could help save teaching jobs. The GOP is disputing that aspect of this budget.
The people understand that what we need to do is cut spending. We need to cut spending more than what the governor has proposed, and we intend to move forward with that.
The taxation and spending cut debate lays the groundwork for much heavier deliberation in the coming weeks. The governor says North Carolinians don't mind paying an extra sales tax, but the Republicans say they won legislative majorities last election on the promise to spend and tax less. Barry Smith of M2MPolitics.com joins us. You heard the governor. You were with me in the press conference on Thursday. She's willing to fight over that sales tax.
She wants the sales tax. She says the sales tax will help her preserve education jobs, classroom teachers, teacher assistants. She actually had a handout on what all that was going to do, and I've got it in here somewhere.
It gets complicated because she had her budget director come in and answered lots of questions. This is a detailed budget. It's not easy to get your hands around. It's a lot of money if you preserve 3/4 of 1 cent on the sales tax.
It's $826 million in 1 year, 863 the second year out. Republicans didn't really react to that very well. They had obviously ran last fall on a pledge. We are not going to extend that sales tax. Now the full 1 cent per dollar sales tax was not extended, but 3/4 of it is. Now, also part of the tax picture, there's some tax reductions in there, business tax reductions. Small business tax relief would be $65 million. She spoke Monday night about reducing the corporate income tax. That would that's $115 million that corporations will save, and they're saying that these type of tax reductions can be used to help businesses provide jobs. Governor saying she'd rather them spend it on jobs rather than spend it on paying their taxes. Now, here's the interesting thing. That's what Republicans have been saying all along. If you will reduce our taxes, we can provide more jobs.
But you've got one tax that will stay on in that sales tax. The governor said she thinks a vast majority of North Carolinians will support maintaining that tax, but Republicans won both chambers of the legislature on a no new taxes pledge. Which is it?
Polls have shown that we could do that. We could keep the sales tax that we've had on the past couple of years. We could keep that on. Senator Phil Berger was very clear in saying polls can say all kinds of different things. The only one he thinks is important is the one when voters go to the polls on Election Day. And last November, they resoundingly said, no, we do not want that tax.
Is this the most contentious point so far in the budget debate?
This is the most contentious point. In fact, this afternoon, Speaker Tillis and President Pro Tem Berger had a press conference, and they both said, hey, we like a lot of things in this budget. That we like her priorities in education and a lot of those type of things, but that's the first thing they brought up as having a problem is this keeping the sales tax.
Barry Smith, so much about this budget we will talk about in future weeks. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.
In other legislative news, the Senate passed a House bill to exempt North Carolinians from a federal requirement that people buy health insurance. This bill would allow North Carolinians to ignore the individual mandate provision of the health care reform law. It does carry one mandate, however. Attorney General Roy Cooper and his team would have to fight the Health Care Act as unconstitutional in court.
The authors of this bill and similar bills know that unless the risks are spread over a large population, that the cost of individual insurance would be extremely high, undermining one of the main purposes of the Affordable Care Act, that everybody have health insurance.
Should the people of North Carolina purchase health care insurance? Absolutely, they should. Should they be forced to purchase health care insurance? Absolutely not. There's where the line is drawn.
The full House will review the Senate's changes and must approve them before sending this bill to Governor Perdue. Some House Democrats propose compensating victims of North Carolina's former eugenics program. Researchers believe between 7,000 and 8,000 people were involuntarily sterilized between 1929 and 1974. This bill would offer those survivors $20,000. It would also create an $18 million compensation fund. The bill is paired with other House legislation to authorize counseling benefits to these survivors and ensure the eugenics program's history is taught in our public schools. Leading Senate Republicans offered tort reform legislation this week. It would protect doctors who practice medicine in good faith and cap certain damage awards in all malpractice lawsuits. Lawmakers heard feedback beginning this week. Supporters of reforming medical malpractice laws in North Carolina say parts of the state have trouble keeping doctors. They argue that medical malpractice insurance premiums are high, as is the potential for patient lawsuits.
We look at this bill seriously as a business bill, as a bill that will help us in North Carolina stabilize our system, bring forth and open the doors to more businesses, bring forth and bring in more doctors to this state.
Senate legislation would legally protect emergency service providers and doctors who make mistakes in practicing medicine but follow standards of practice that are medically accepted. No protection would be given to negligent treatment of patients. Monetary judgments for non-economic damages, think pain and suffering, would be limited in any malpractice suit. Patient advocates are speaking out about it.
Catastrophically injured patients who came in through the emergency room would receive no compensation at all. There would be total immunity for emergency room doctors to make a mistake when we go into the emergency room. Second, that people who are paralyzed, who lose all of their limbs, who are killed, that they would recover at most $250,000. Is that fair?
Other senators are taking a more cautious approach to this early legislation. Senator and Dr. Eric Mansfield says there are many details he wants to see ironed out as part of malpractice law or tort reform.
And it protects providers, decrease the cost of medicine. But on the other hand, we never want to do anything that's going to keep people from being able to go to court and really get what they deserve. And certainly, if there's been negligence, you should get everything you should deserve. And I'm speaking as a physician. I think most physicians feel that way.
The Senate has been taking public input on reforming malpractice laws as this bill winds through the committee process. We're here with the Senate Rules Committee Chairman, Senator Tom Apodaca from out in the mountains. Welcome to the show.
Henderson County. Good to be here.
County. Well, in your opinion, what's the lack of tort reform doing to North Carolina?
Well, I like to take it locally, take it to Henderson County. Over the last 7 years, I think we have had 2 or 3 neurologists come in and leave because of our malpractice premiums, and it becomes prohibitive for them to make a living practicing. Overall, you know, some practices and specialties are not affected as much as others. But I think this will help bring stability to the market. It will help our insurers know what they're up against. And when they underwrite a particular plan, they'll be able to do it in, I think, a more efficient way. Also, I think it adds to the cost of medical tests, where doctors are hesitant to go with their initial diagnosis, and they do a lot additional testing in order to make sure.
Do you think insurance companies would reduce the premiums on the doctors if they had some protection from how much damages they could pay? Is that what you're going for?
Yeah, you know, I don't know if I'm going for as much as reducing the premium as keeping it level and keeping it at an affordable rate. We crafted our legislation a lot after what they did in Texas in '03, and their experience has been quite remarkable. They have had tens of thousands, from my understanding, doctors come into practice since 2003 when they implemented a system similar to this.
You know, I've had some patient advocates talk to me on the air in the stories we're covering this week. No doubt they've addressed you, saying only a few hundred cases ever go to trial. The plaintiffs normally lose. This really isn't a big deal. Why are you even messing with it?
Exactly, and that's how they, bring it forth. But if you also, we're looking into, and I do not have the exact statistics, but we will have soon, we want to look at the cases that were settled and the amounts they were settled for. That has a greater bearing than I think actual cases that went to court, because many times the insurance company says, let's just settle this, not take a chance going to court and having some astronomical claim come down.
There's a lot of different doctors out there, medical professionals. Who exactly would be protected from a lawsuit in the service of their job under this bill?
Well, right now, physicians, hospitals would be protected, because we're seeing more and more physicians go to work under the umbrella of hospitals. And all my hospitals, everyone in my district has come out in favor of this. Most of the doctors I've spoken to say, please do this.
I heard some of your committee members say, well, wait a minute, you go into the ER or the doctor's office with the sniffles and you're a victim of malpractice. That's different than coming in with a major wound or being in a car accident, the doctor makes a mistake on the fly and leaves you maimed or hurt or dead.
Right,
and
right.
They shouldn't, what do you make of that argument that differing degrees of this?
Dealing with this 3 or 4 times, we know what to expect from the other side. They'll bring out the worst case scenario. They'll bring forth circumstances that happen with particular cases. And I've heard one case spoken about that has changed 2 or 3 times in actually what happened. It went from meningitis and then it was misdiagnosed. Oh, it was actually Rocky Mountain spotted tick fever and so on. And, that is heartbreaking. And I also believe that any jury is going to award those folks money regardless of what the law states. What we're trying to do is protect here against the astronomical claims that come down with some juries.
Senator Tom Apodaca, thanks a lot.
My pleasure.
The House is one procedural vote from creating a joint regulatory review committee with the state Senate. Republican leaders say this group will hold public hearings around the state where they'll take notes on state regulations that might be hurting the economy. It will also consider ideas for reforming how state agencies write and approve new rules. The House is scheduled to address the bill again on Monday night. 2 House Democrats who are also former educators say a small change to the public school calendar could boost student test scores. Their bill would have schools set starting dates as early as August 15th. That earlier start date would come with a guarantee that students would take their end-of-semester tests before the holidays.
We think that testing is best done immediately after the information is afforded to the kids. And if we can get that testing done before the winter holidays, the tendency to regress and forget most of it is not going to be as great as it would be if you wait until mid-January to do that.
The House Commerce Committee hears this bill first. Nearly 40 state House members believe it's time that county governments stop trying to get the land transfer tax passed by local referenda. State law lets counties repeatedly hold referenda on the tax, which is levied on real estate sales, with no deadline to get it passed or give up trying. Nearly 24 counties have asked their voters to approve that land transfer tax and have been rejected. The full Senate will consider legislation to lift the cap on North Carolina's charter schools. The Senate Education Committee approved the bill this week. The bill sponsor says this issue is well vetted. Democrats say the bill's moving too quickly. The Senate Education Committee approved the bill this week to lift North Carolina's cap on charter schools. A voice vote moved the bill, but that vote included vocal Democratic opposition. They're asking the Republicans why this bill must move, in their opinion, so quickly.
This cap has been on charter schools since the onset. There are those of us who have been trying to get that initially raised and now removed for a long time. It's time to move on to do that.
The Democrats wanted some guarantees in the charter school cap bill. They wanted new charter schools to offer free and reduced lunches and transportation to certain students. They say charter schools could exclude certain kids if those kids don't get good meals at home or don't have transportation to get to their charter school campus. Charter schools are not currently required under state law to provide busing or school meals.
It's only for a subset of the population, and most charter schools do that. Why we would allow charter schools, new charter schools, to come on to be exclusive, to keep kids out, is beyond me.
Bill sponsor Senator Richard Stevens says current charter schools are meeting the needs of their communities, including transportation and lunches, if local school administrators see there's a need.
Most have chosen to do just that, provide free and reduced lunch programs, to provide transportation programs. But the local group gets to decide what's in the best interest of that charter school.
Many of the bill's opponents, like Senator Josh Stein, tell me they actually support charter schools, but this legislation doesn't provide that oversight of charter school effectiveness. Supporters of the bill say heavy regulation will stifle educational innovation. The House Finance Committee will discuss changing the state's earned income tax credit. The current tax credit allows North Carolinians to receive tax rebates larger than the taxes they pay into the system. This proposed reform would limit that tax credit. No one could receive a rebate check larger than the amount of state income taxes they're charged. Some Republican lawmakers want the state constitution to guarantee public access to many state documents. Their bill would let voters decide on amending the North Carolina Constitution to define the public's right to inspect or copy any public record made or used in conducting public business. The amendment would cover documents created beginning in 2013. Older state documents would fall under existing state law. Representative Stephen LaRogue is a primary sponsor of the Sunshine Amendment bill. He joins us here on the set. Why are state laws that are on the books not enough? You need a constitutional amendment to guarantee sunshine.
I believe so. What we see is local government, and government at all levels, tends to try to wiggle out of providing the information, and then folks have to go to court and sue. And a constitutional amendment will make it, I think, much more difficult for that to happen.
What made you think constitutional amendment? Do you think voters would vote this through? You have that confidence in their decision making?
I do, because this bill is very similar to Florida's bill, and I believe it passed with about 70%. So it should, I believe it would pass with a pretty large majority in North Carolina.
Now, I've read this bill. It's written by lawyers, of course, and every person has the right to inspect or copy any public record under some parameters. Why do you use the word right versus privilege?
Because they paid for it. If the taxpayers paid for it, they have a right to see where their taxpayer money is going. And so that's why I believe that it is a right as opposed to a privilege.
Now there's three sections here. The General Assembly has an option to, by 2/3 majority vote, I guess, to exempt certain information from public eyes.
Right, and that would be on a case-by-case basis.
Now, would you have to file a bill to
Yes.
hide some information, go through the committee process, both chambers signed by the governor?
That's exactly what you have to do. You have to get 80 votes in the House and 34 votes in the Senate.
Why did you pick such a high threshold?
Because once again, we go back to the public's right to know. If we're going to make it so that they can't see what's there, then it should be by a supermajority, or have the vast majority of the legislature should say it's okay not to reveal that information.
What types of information should the average North Carolinian have access to, and in what circumstances does the public not have the right or the privilege to know what was said, what was written, what was filed?
I think everything should be open, and then we should have certain exemptions. Whatever is on the books now will remain on the books. That will still be exempted when this goes into effect. Anything that's passed between now and the effective date would be that way. But as far as listing the various things, I really don't want to pigeonhole myself or the public. I think that it's something that's up to the legislature to make that decision by a supermajority.
Your philosophy behind this bill, do you not trust state government to be open and honest with the public?
It's not that I don't trust or mistrust anyone. It's that I think the public has a right to know. They paid for the information. They have the right to know what's there.
Representative Stephen LaRogue, thanks for being on North Carolina Now Legislative Week in Review.
My pleasure.
Pro-gun rights lawmakers are pushing to open more public locations where properly credentialed gun owners may carry their weapons. A new bill would allow the concealed carrying of handguns inside restaurants and in public parks if the gun owner holds a concealed carry permit. Government buildings would still forbid handgun possession. The law's start date would be this coming December. The Senate began deliberating another self-defense bill, commonly called the Castle Doctrine. This version would allow people to use deadly force against home intruders without facing criminal charges. Some Castle Doctrine advocates say home defense is too limiting and this bill should be expanded. But Senator Doug Berger offers a scenario for why his bill offers home defense protection.
You could call out, they could not respond, and you could shoot the intruder. And lo and behold, when the lights are turned on, the person has no weapon. And it's possible that a district attorney, in looking at that, and the family members of that person would press the DA, well, you need to prosecute him. He didn't have to use that. It wasn't reasonable for him to use that level of force.
Now, an effective Castle Doctrine law, which deters crime and gives lawful citizens the tools to defend their families contains basically 4 things in our position, and that is a clear statement that the crime victims who face a reasonable fear of imminent death or great bodily injury have no duty to retreat prior to using deadly force, not only in the home, but anywhere they may lawfully be. And that is not, of course, a part of this bill at present.
A House version of the Castle Doctrine allows a person to use deadly force if they're being carjacked or kidnapped. The governor could offer a larger reward towards capturing fugitives if some GOP senators get their way. The governor right now is allowed to offer a $10,000 reward, but this bill would up that amount to $100,000. Even people calling in the tip that gets a fugitive captured would qualify. We're always online here at North Carolina Now Legislative Week in Review. We'd love for you to be our friend on Facebook. Search us out, Legislative Week in Review, in the Facebook search box. You can follow us on Twitter. Our handle is @NCNLegWeek. Thanks to those of you who have followed us so far this session. If you don't do Twitter or Facebook, how about an email? It's convenient, legweek@unctv.org, and you can see clips and video highlights at our show's webpage, www.unctv.org/legweek. That's our show for this week. We'll see you next time.
Quality public television is made possible through the financial contributions of viewers like you, who invite you to join them in supporting UNC-TV.